Hi, welcome back to my blog, which is number 3. And we're going to have a look at why I can't shake off this depression. I'm going to do it with a PowerPoint presentation and just talk you through it, because I think that's probably the quickest way to do this. So have you ever thought that you feel low in mood, sad or empty? You can't be bothered, and the things around you that you used to be interested in are just not, you're just not interested anymore. You have to push yourself to do things. You're grumpy. You actually feel as if you're slowing down, and it might be quite noticeable to other people. Or you're not eating properly or sleeping the same way as you used to do. If you've been feeling like this for a while, then you may be wondering why you can't seem to get out of it and get back to whatever is your normal. One of the reasons is that you may have had a number of events that you have found difficult to cope with. Now, this is not the only reason, but just one of the reasons that we're going to have a look at. And what I would ask you to do, if you are feeling like this, is have a think about anything that's happened to you over, say, the last 2 years and put it into a timeline. Now, if there's a lot of things happened, you might just want to use a year. You can use 2 years, you can use 5 years, or you can do your whole life timeline. But usually 2 years is about enough if you're feeling like that to see if it might be related to the number of events that you've had in your life. So some of the events that might go on a timeline is, have you got married? Have you got divorced, separated? Has a beloved pet died, like a dog or a cat or even a budgie? Have you moved house? And if you've moved house, was it your choice to move house, or did something happen that you had to move house? Again, a new job, similar. Did you want to have a new job? Did you apply for a new job? Had you been made redundant before? And has anything happened in your family, like a member of your family having died or become seriously ill or had some sort of diagnosis, which is for anybody difficult to deal with? Now, just an example of a timeline, it's really just quite simple. It's just a line, and it represents whatever time you want to look at your changes. And you put in roughly and approximate dates that these things happened. So there we've put the first one in, there's a change of job. Your gran died, for instance, is either yourself or somebody else has had a cancer diagnosis, and maybe your dog or your cat has to be put down. So anything that you have as in your list of things that have been an event or changed your life, or you've felt quite emotional about, write it down. Try and get the dates and roughly, in the months apart. And then what we're going to do is to put it into a change curve. Now, the change curve looks like this. Up one axis is impact, how it affects you. Now, we're using impact as mood. So above that time line would be a positive mood, and below the timeline would be negative mood. And across the bottom is time. So this is maybe your 2 years trying to get in. And when we have a change or a loss, we're quite often in denial. It could be serious denial, or it could just be, thinking that, oh, this can't have happened. Your mood goes down and there's anger there. Till you get to the bottom of this curve where it's labelled depression. And then your mood comes back up again because you might be bargaining. And then you get into acceptance. Yes, it's really happened. Now, when you get there, then your mood is quite often higher than when you started, when the event happened, because you've had a change and you've accepted it and you've dealt with it. So mood goes back up. And that's absolutely normal in any loss or change. Now, they could be small changes that don't affect you much, but it still happens. The dip might not be as big. It might not take you as long to get through it. You could have lots of them in a day with different things. Even something like losing your purse will have this curve. Now, that's fine if everything keeps above the line, but very often when we have changes, and particularly changes forced on us, we don't keep above that line in a positive mood. So although your mood is a bit depressed, if it's above the line, you're not really in depression. But if it's below the line, you're starting to really have a depressed mood. And the lower it goes under the timeline for the impact that it's having you, the more depressed you'll feel. So that is only one change. But if you've had a number of events, that process happens multiple times. And in this change loss curve, I've done this with 4 changes. You'll see they're all different colours, the changes. So each of the change or the losses has this process, starting with denial, going down into depression and coming back up till you get to acceptance. And then if you don't end up accepting it at any point, then that's called a failure to adapt, and you can pretty much stay in a low mood or angry mood. But as you see, as you're going along these processes, when you get into the depression, and we've put the first one under the timeline, so the first change is taking you into a negative mood. You'll see that it is a negative mood, but if it was just one change, you would be getting up into the bargaining. But then we have the green line, something else has happened, and it starts further along your process. So by the time that you're coming down into the depression, you could be coming in lower, and it extends that low period because it's taking longer to get up into the positive part. And then the next one, the purple one, again, that's starting further along in time. So it's starting further along in that first process and further along in the second process. So again, it's extending out that depression. And the fourth one is also extending out the depression. So when you look at it, instead of having the ups, which I've left in and just marked with crosses because they no longer apply, and you can see that if we just fill in all the depression bit, you'll see that it's quite a marked part of the processes because it's elongated that time of depression, and you're not actually getting to be able to deal with any of them properly, and you're kind of in your failure to adapt because things keep happening to you and it keeps pulling you down into this depression. So if you are there, what do you need to do? Now, it may be if you've got all of those events, actually just understanding it can be helpful. Yes, that's where I am. And if nothing else happens serious, then I'm going to come out of it fairly soon. Or mostly people need to deal with the process. And what we're trying to do is get all those processes to join together so that it ends up more or less like one curve. So it's a case of looking at, in your list of events, what is the event that really has affected you the most? It's not necessarily the last one that you might think it might be. That might be the one that's just tipped the balance, but the one that's mostly responsible, you think, for a large part of the depression, and deal with that. Now, whether it's a loss, whether it's a change, whether it's the new job, we'll just take the new job, for instance. If it's a new job, then what is it in that job that's causing you the problems? Are you out of your depth? Do you have to do longer hours? Do you not understand what you're doing? Is it causing you quite a level of stress? Deal with that kind of thing first. And in most cases, when you're dealing with that main problem, then all the other processes shuffle together and you start to go through that process of the dip and then starting to come up from the dip, where you start to get into acceptance. If you can't do that yourself, maybe you're needing some one-to-one help. So we offer friendly and confidential CBT therapy and counselling. So you can contact us through the website and just complete the contact form on the website and somebody can get back to you. Or you can contact us on our email, which is info@headcoach.online, and hopefully things will get better for you. Thank you for listening. And next week, we're going to be looking at a model that we can think about our problems.